Do the employees of the organization value? Do they feel valued? Are they proud to be a part of that company? It may sound crazy, but we have an individual that got a JMARK tattoo on her arm because she's so proud to be a part of the company. As crazy as it sounds, it's something that I'm proud of. When you have people in an organization that are proud to work there, they're going to create value. They're going to pay it forward, and they're going to take care of their teammates. And I think that having a CEO that really gets what it means to serve their team and to lift them up and to help them to become the best version of themselves, that creates an environment that people want to be a part of.
Welcome to In Our Town, Conversations with Springfieldians Making a Difference. I'm your host, Tom Carlson, publisher of the Springfield Daily Citizen. If you'd like to comment on this episode, our email is inourtown@sgfcitizen.org. We'd love to hear from you. My guest today is Tom Douglas. He is president and CEO of JMARK. It's a local company that provides IT consulting services. He joined it in 1997 and he bought the company in 2001. From that time, he's grown it from 6 employees to 110. And over that time, he has been listed by Inc. magazine 9 consecutive times as one of the top fastest-growing companies in the United States. He's here today to talk about his experience in the book that he's written called Adapt or Die. It's a primer for entrepreneurs starting a business in a fast-changing world. Tom, welcome to In Our Town.
Well, thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, to begin with, let me ask you, why the name Adapt or Die?
You know, when I started thinking about how I wanted to share some of the nuggets of wisdom that I've learned, sometimes the hard way, over the years, I realized that one of the things that causes businesses to crash is because they become so hardened in thinking that they own the market, that they need to keep doing it the way they've always done it. And in today's world of technological shifts and challenges, people dynamic changes, generational changes, I think that one of the things that is going to enable a business to be successful in the next 10 to 15 years is its adaptability. And the companies that refuse to embrace that are destined to be the next blockbuster.
You know, when I read your title, it made me think of Darwin's theory of evolution and the adaptability of species. Did that run through your head at all when you were doing this?
Yeah, well, it did a little bit. Certainly, you know, when you think about how a business changes, like a species changes or whatever it may be, I think that we all have to recognize the outside environmental impacts against who we are, how we're operating, and how we look at the world. And if we aren't humble enough as an organization to recognize those outside influences, then we're destined to fail or die. I think it's a matter of really embracing that idea of, you know, we're impacted so greatly by those influences that if we don't pay attention to them, you know, it's going to hurt.
There's a lot of talk in your book, what I would call systems thinking. But how did you come to this? Did you want to be running some IT company 30 years ago?
Had no idea. I had no clue. It was pure accident. I went to college at Mizzou for a couple of years and kind of floundered around and partied a little too much and had a little too much fun and decided that I needed to get my life together and join the Navy. And it was in the Navy where I found technology. And I actually had a chief who I had the privilege of working with, and he told me to get out. He
What
said,
do you mean by get out?
Get out of the Navy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was getting ready to re-enlist, and he said, Tom, he said, you've got a talent in technology and in people and the way that you see things. He said, you'll do more good for our country by creating jobs than you'll ever do staying in the Navy. He said, there's lots of guys that can do what you do in the Navy. He said, you need to get out and go create jobs. I thought he was crazy. I thought he had lost it, had no idea what he was talking about, fallen in love with tech and databases and building systems and geeking out, and I could have just gone in a hole and done that. And that's what I started doing. And then I developed a passion for helping people climb within the organization and become better versions of themselves, and that kind of turned into the next level.
Your book reminds me of case studies that you would read about in Harvard Business School. You've got a set of characters, Chuck and Victor and Sam and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I must say, I enjoyed reading it from that perspective. Lots of times, this kind of a book can get pretty dry.
Yeah.
Without doing any spoilers, there's even a little romance in here.
There is.
And so maybe in some ways it's more true to life than folks might think, because that does happen from time to time
It does.
with people that work together. It's like a case study. You've got a small company, it's a tech company that does stuff that's similar to what you do. I'm sure that the names have been changed to protect the innocent through here to some extent.
Absolutely.
Well, let me just ask you, how much of this really happened in your experience?
I would say 60 to 70% of the story is kind of based on real life experiences. We learned as an organization as we were growing some of the same lessons that are there. And the reason that I built the characters in the first edition of the book that I wrote about 7 years ago was worse than reading an encyclopedia. It was horrible. It was dry, and I mean, it was a mess.
I'll have to pause right there. From time to time, I should be able to write better than I have. I have a journalism degree. Every now and then, I would try to write an article or something, and my wife is my editor. And after the first cut, she'll scoot her reading glasses down on the edge of her nose and look at me, and she'll say, "You're really not very good at this, are you?" So eventually, I guess it's readable, but that reminds me of that. 7 years ago was your first cut at it.
Yeah. It was, and it was a horrible cut. And I tried again and navigated through it, and didn't do very well the second time either. And ultimately, I hired a book writing coach.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And she had a methodology, and she kept saying more stories, more stories, more stories. So the third edition of the book that I wrote had a bunch of individual stories.
Interesting.
And I say the third edition. I got about 60% of the way through the book, and I said, what if I blew it up and told the same story and the cast of characters all the way through it, so that it wasn't starting from scratch in every circumstance?
Well, it carries the lessons, I think,
Exactly.
by doing it that way.
Yeah. And she said it's really hard, but if you can pull it off in terms of the storylines and get the messages through that you want, that it's a lot easier to read and follow for people. I don't know exactly what edition it was when it was finally done, but it took several rewrites, and it turned out I'm pretty pleased with it.
Well, I think you should be. You know, I had two big takeaways from reading your book. One is, hey, the guy that's writing this, he thinks in terms of systems. How does this system interface with that system? So, okay, that sounds like an engineer talking, but the spice to it was also how empathetic the character comes across with the people with whom he works. And it's not often that you see those two skill sets in the same box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think I probably learned the hard way in terms of that, because I naturally think in lines like spreadsheets, in linear motion. But as we navigated through scaling the company, we have a unique opportunity in what we do, because we have the privilege to work with so many different businesses that are successful across the country. And
so you get a lot of takeaways.
You get a lot of takeaways. And you wouldn't necessarily think of it as an IT company as one that can learn so much about business operations overall, but you get to see those that work really well, and the cultures that work really well, and those that struggle because they don't have the systems, or they don't have the communication pathways, or whatever it may be. And so what I have been fortunate to experience is having an incredible ecosystem around me directly with my board of directors and mentors that I've had, but also to witness the successful companies around the country and what they do. And what we see oftentimes is that the number one area of failure within a business is when a work product, whatever that is handed from one team to the other team. Generally speaking, when you look at pods or teams of individuals, they work really well together. They develop their own ecosystem. But as soon as they get ready to hand work off to the next team, there's animosity and friction, because somebody's handed me work that's not good enough, or they missed the deadline, or the timing was off, or the quality was off, whatever it may be. It's that friction that slows a business down. And so inside of our organization, and what I share in the book, is that if you can get those handoffs working really well within the business, so that you understand the downstream effects of what you're doing on the rest of the organization, and the people who are receiving the materials have a good feedback loop to upstream in terms of, is this good work quality,
Yes.
and this is what I need more or less of, then the organization actually speeds up, gets more efficient, the culture of the business works better, and the customer service actually is increased as well.
One of the things you talk about early on in your book is a successful leader has to have a love of truth. Talk about that.
Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes early in my career when I bet more on hope than truth. And I certainly don't want to dismiss the value of hope, because I think that's part of the entrepreneurial heart, is to hope for a better future and to make a difference. So I don't want to take away from that, but there is a certain amount of lifeline that you can give it and a certain amount of realism that you have to bring into the business. And hoping that you're going to make cash flow by closing a deal and collecting the money in a certain period of time isn't a strategy. And I had to go beg, borrow, and steal for cash way too often when we were in our younger days of trying to support the business, and knowing that the reality in my heart, it was like, well, the reality is that probably not going to come, but I'm going to hope that it's going to come. And I just relied on that. Or whether it put it into a people problem scenario, I'm going to hope that that individual gets it, it's going to click, that they're going to rise to the level that they need to in order to be successful. And in my heart, you kind of have an instinct that it's never going to click. And so I realized over the time, while we need to be positive and we need to create all the opportunities and conduits for people and situations, you have to fall in love with the truth and embrace it, especially when it becomes being critical of yourself as a leader and as a result of the feedback around your products or services that you're providing to your clients. Our mission, our goal is always to provide more value than people pay us for. And if you don't know what people value, you can never be successful in that.
So this reminds me of a guy named Ray Dalio, who started a hedge fund in his New York apartment back in the 70s, and at least until recently was the largest hedge fund in the world. Mm-hmm. And he's known for what he calls radical transparency in his business. And as I understand it, no matter who you are in that organization, you can say to the boss what you think. Mm-hmm. Now, the flip side is he gets to say to you the same thing, and you better know what you're talking about. Coincidental with all that is, like, pretty much the books are all open.
Yeah.
What do you think about that kind of approach?
I agree with it through a filter. And the filter is empathy and compassion and encouragement for the person that you're talking to. I think the truth can be a hammer or a gift. And so many people use this idea that I'm telling you the truth as a hammer, and they do it with the excuse of, well, I need to tell you the truth. But if they're delivering it without the intent of honoring the other person and lifting them up and making them better, then it's a hammer. But if I'm giving you the truth in an empathetic way, where my goal is to make you a better person, to serve you, to help you to overcome a challenge, then it's a very positive thing. And so the filter that I think has to be applied to radical candor and transparency in those circumstances is knowing your audience, knowing how they can receive that truth, and delivering it in a way where it's the gift rather than the hammer.
As well read as you are in the business literature, I'm sure you've in your readings heard of a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Yeah. And he says to begin with the end in mind.
Exactly.
That's what that reminds me of. If you're going to tell them the truth, where do you expect this thing to end up?
Yeah. What are you trying to achieve? Are you just trying to beat them up, or are you trying to lift them up? Mm-hmm.
Let's circle back a little bit. I was just in the local Biz 417 magazine. Again, your company was highlighted for all its successes, and congratulations.
Thank you.
But in terms of employees, I think I read that you may do 8 interviews before you settle on the right person for the job.
Sometimes more. Yeah, we're very picky when it comes to bringing the right person. In fact, we had an all company meeting this morning, and even though the next round of hires that we're going to make are probably going to be more challenging than the previous, just because of the job markets and growth patterns, I encourage the company not to acquiesce, not to compromise on those standards.
But what's the trade-offs if you're going to be that fastidious about it all?
Well, I mean, the culture. I mean, you benefit from a positive culture where people are aligned.
But you can't grow your business if you don't have the employees. So it sounds to me like you're holding off or throttling your growth until you can get the employee base right.
Yeah, there's a balance. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we've had to throttle much. Some, but not much. What the impact is the team that you've got ends up working harder. And that's not always fair, and don't want to declare it as such. But what we've learned the hard way over the years is it's a lot easier to do the work harder the first time than having to clean up after somebody else and do it again the second time. And our cultures embrace that we would rather work harder as a team to make sure that we've got the right team than bring people in that don't align or are going to create challenges for us.
Different subject. If you were involved in not running a company but helping somebody start one, some guy or gal has a great idea, and they need to hire a CEO, what personality traits would you be looking for?
People leaders and a student, somebody who's hungry to constantly learn. I think one of the things that happens when entrepreneurial people get busy in their business is that they forget that they've got to be a student first. And if you're not hungry and you're not learning, then the company stops learning and stops progressing or innovating. The pace of technology, the pace of change requires that we're paying attention to what's going on around us again. And if you're not a courageous student, I think that you're going to be in trouble.
Does a CEO need to have more people and organization skills as opposed to really know what the business is about? How important is it that he knows how the widget's made?
I think it's less important in terms of how the widget's made, more important in terms of how the customer sees the value of the widget, but most importantly, how the team values the organization itself. So do the employees of the organization value? Do they feel valued? Are they proud to be a part of that company? It may sound crazy, but we have an individual that got a JMARK tattoo on her arm because she's so proud to be a part of the company. As crazy as it sounds, it's something that I'm proud of. When you have people in an organization that are proud to work there, they're going to create value. They're going to pay it forward, and they're going to take care of their teammates. And I think that having a CEO that really gets what it means to serve their team and to lift them up and to help them to become the best version of themselves, that creates an environment that people want to be a part of.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Rance Berger. I'm the managing editor of the Springfield Daily Citizen. I've been a Missouri journalist for about 18 years now. I've worked a total of 8 different jobs in 5 different places, but it's all been in Missouri. The hardest part of my job is really finding time to give all of our stories the love that they deserve. We have such a great group of reporters. When they work that hard, I want to be able to put that much work back into their stories to make them even better. The most rewarding part of my job is just being as plugged into what life is here in Springfield, Missouri. I get to know everything that's going on in government, in business, in education. I like living in Springfield because it's never boring, there's always something to do, and there's a wide variety of experiences available. You just have to be willing to put yourself out there a little bit and go look for them.
One of the quotes I pulled out of your book that I liked, and it says, I would suggest to you that a product isn't a widget or a service, but a promise that you make to your customers. I like that. Tell me more.
I think when organizations grow and they think about going to market with a product and they think about selling that product, one of the most important components is realizing that there is an exchange of trust that has to occur when people exchange their cash for your product or service, whatever it is. And they're giving up something that they have worked for in exchange for that. And as they make that exchange, they have an expectation, and that is your promise of the product. And if it's an iPhone, then you expect it that every time you pick up the phone, you can dial and call someone, that it rings when somebody calls you, you can send text messages. There's an expectation that you have with it. And if your product or your service fails to meet those promises, you're always going to have a customer who's dissatisfied. But if you always and consistently can over-deliver on those promises, you're always going to have repeat business, and that's going to help you to ensure that you're treating your customers well. And
so are you a under-promise, over-deliver type of guy?
Yeah, I do my best to steer on the side of under-promise and over-deliver, but not too much. I feel like if you try to go too far and too extreme in that, you compromise your ability to justify the value of the product or service that you're providing. And I think it's important that you be confident in what you do and how you do it and the value that that's worth. But if you promise, as an example, in our business to make a phone call back within X amount of hours and you can cut that in half, then it's a great experience for the end user.
So you've been with JMARK since 1997.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the big mistakes you made.
Plenty. I would start with people, and I would say that I've hired a lot of wrong people because I wanted talent over culture fit, and I've held on to people too long that just didn't align for whatever reason. I tried to work through it. Concurrent to that, we've given people some awesome opportunities, and they've risen above and become incredible leaders in the business too. But I would say that our biggest mistakes are hiring and not firing. One of the mentors that I have said, "Boy, I wish I would have taken a lot longer to fire that bad employee," said no one ever. When you realize that you have somebody that's not a fit, then it's time to have the courageous conversation and figure out why, and then navigate through it in a respectful way. I would say the other ones is biting off more than we can chew, in under-promising, over-delivering, over-promise, and under-deliver.
So you weren't being truthful with yourself, actually.
Yeah.
You're kidding yourself.
Kidding yourself. Yeah, I thought we could outwork the problem, or I thought we could overcome a challenge in a situation, and it was that hope versus truth thing that we talked about earlier. The facts didn't line up to support it, but it was an aspirational goal that we believed we could work through and overcome. At times, we've absolutely failed. And the last one that I would throw out, and there's dozens, I could talk for days, but an old Ronald Reagan quote that I'm sure you'll appreciate: trust but verify.
The SALT Treaty.
Yeah. Checks and balances, whether it's in people, whether it's in technology, whether it's in money, whether it's in salespeople promises to your customers. I mean, everything, trust but verify, and build those capabilities and systems in place to do that. And that helps to protect your brand.
Are you pretty good at, once you make a mistake, not repeating it? Or do you have to get, like Mark Twain said, does a mule have to kick you twice?
I'd say a little bit of both. When it comes to people challenges, I'm slower to learn because in my heart, I want to give people a chance, and it's hard for me to give up. And so I have a tendency to kind of battle through those things. But I think, the gift of scale is that I've been able to surround myself with incredible people, and they have strengths where I have weaknesses. And while I may have hope and aspirations for an individual, they have a little more practical vantage point or view on what they're really capable of, and we balance each other out really well, and that makes us a better team and a better company.
I'm sure it's more or less true that 90% of small businesses fail.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice to people that are thinking about starting their own business? What's the checklist they should go through before they decide to pull the trigger or not?
Oh gosh. First, I would say do it.
Just jump in. Huh?
I would say do it. I am a big believer that you shouldn't go through life and say, I wish I would have. And so if you have a heart for it and the passion for it, do it. The second thing that I would say is recognize it's going to be 10 times harder than you ever thought it would. So your worst nightmare scenario times 10 is what you're likely to have to endure going through it. Mm-hmm. So just be prepared for the storm. But I would say validate the product or the service. Ask the customer. It doesn't matter how passionate you are about it, how much value you think it creates, or how much you think it's worth. You have to validate the market. I think one of the areas that many businesses fail is the lack of appreciation for market compatibility with a product in terms of their pricing and the value that they provide. And going back to the truth comment, you really have to embrace adoption rates, market penetration, competition, all the things that are relevant there, but understand market tolerance. I think a lot of people think, well, I can do a little bit better job and charge a little bit more for it, and people are going to see through, the quality of the product. And in some cases, that's true, but I would argue that most of the time it's kind of the 80-20 rule. The 20% might see through it, but the 80% are going to be like, it's good enough. I think a good way to really understand how products penetrate the marketplace is to look at automobiles, because almost everybody has to have one in all demographics and all income levels. But if you look at the vast majority of the vehicles that are on the market, they're in the middle. They're in the mid-range. They're the four-door sedan, the minivan, the very family-friendly automobile. Even if somebody can afford something more, or maybe it would be a better financial decision to get something less, they still have a tendency to go for the middle. And so unless you're going for that niche market of that 20% and you can justify that, then understand the market and what that's worth.
I think one question I'd ask a person that was thinking about going into business and doing something, I'd say, If it's such a good idea, why hasn't somebody already done it?
100% agree. There has to be a unique selling proposition, something that's a different twist on it that helps you to stand out. And that could be as simple as, locally owned and operated. It's a unique product or service that the marketplace doesn't have, and you're bringing something to the community. But it definitely needs a unique twist in terms of what's different about it. And in today's world of technological changes, sometimes it's delivery, sometimes it's speed, sometimes it's a lower quality, better price point, for a compromise in a certain feature that most people don't use.
You probably wouldn't want me as a business partner because I was a bankruptcy lawyer for 20 years and all I saw was the deals that went bad.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot to be learned there.
It seemed to me, in my experience dealing with a lot of failures, there's something in the water that real estate developers drink that they can just never get enough. They love the deals. They're always optimistic until they go broke.
Yep.
Then there are the people who maybe have a good idea, but they're not realistic about how long it's going to take for the thing to survive, so they run out of money.
Yeah.
They have one setback and they're broke.
Yep.
And then management seems to come up a lot.
Leadership.
You're obviously a very exceptional person, but what do you advise somebody who got some skill sets, maybe a good idea, but really sucks at managing people? How do you put that kind of team together?
Yeah, it's really tough. You just have to find the right team to surround yourself with, or don't do it. If the business requires people to scale, which almost all businesses do, not all, but most. I even say it in the book that if you're building a business, maybe you can handle a team of 5 or 10, but at a certain point you need some real leadership skills to step in. Build your plan to bring the individuals to the table who are going to be able to complement. I mean, you may be a tactician or a technical person or have a specific skill set that's unique to the market, but if you can't serve people within the business, it's going to be very limited in what you're going to be able to grow into. So definitely need a partner.
I was talking to a guy that's successful, an older guy, probably almost as old as I am, and he said something that was a little counterintuitive, but it made some sense to me. Maybe you'd react to it. He said he became more and more aware of his limitations. And as a consequence of that, he stuck within his sphere of competence, stuck to his knitting, and would bring in people to fill in those glaring gaps where he didn't have the skill set. Talk about that.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And because I think when you're new into business and figuring it out, you have to be the jack of all trades and the master of none. I mean, that's kind of what entrepreneurship is. I mean, I ran payroll, I managed taxes, I did inventory management, I checked parts in, I went on site and fixed computers. I mean, you have to do it all. But I hate messing with payroll. I mean, it's not something I'm good at. I don't want to do it, nor should I be in that area. So I 100% agree that you surround yourself with a team of experts as you can, as soon as you can. And oftentimes, one of the things that I had to do in business, and I know from your own experiences, sometimes to bring the experts around you that you need, you have to pay them better than you pay yourself and make the sacrifice and get over the ego that it's my business and therefore I have to have the biggest paycheck. Well, sometimes when you're building it, that's not the truth.
Yeah. You
have to be willing to write the bigger check to somebody else so that they can help you get the business to the next level.
It does kind of frost you, though, doesn't it?
It's hard. It is. It's hard. But it's the reality of growing a business. I mean, your job is to figure out what risks to take and what sacrifices to make in order for the business to survive. And if you're not willing to make those sacrifices, compromise, and take the risks, you're never going to make it. To your point earlier, running out of money is a big problem that startups have and new business owners have. And I think it goes into that 10X rule. If you think it's going to take $100,000 to get a business off the ground, go raise $1 million. Ask for the money before you need it, because if you wait until you need it, it's too late because nobody's going to loan it to you. And we learned that the hard way.
I was reading something the other day and talked about Forbes' top 10 billionaires. And it said the top 10 billionaires had between them 13 divorces.
Oh, my gosh.
And, typically I think the statistic in the United States is about half the marriages end up in divorce, which obviously those people were really successful, but it may say something about work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be a really successful entrepreneur and maintain a work-life balance?
Yeah, you can. It took me a long time. In terms of the top mistakes I've made, that one would be up there. I mean, it was a pretty normal day for me to be 12, 14-hour days, when you're grinding it out, making it happen. I think the trick, and it's more available today than it was, 20 years ago, but it's finding a system. And there are a lot of life systems for entrepreneurs. And so if you find yourself in a trap of feeling like you can't get away, that you always have to put more into it, surround yourself with great mentors, find a system that works really well. For me, it was Wake Up Warrior. And it was an entrepreneurial operating system that I needed, that focuses on body, being, balance, and business. And it helped me to navigate through those challenges, figure out what was most important, how to structure my day, how to get up and have the quiet time that I needed to prepare mentally to be a husband, to be a dad, and then to be a leader in the business.
Something that's in the news all the time these days is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it?
It is an incredibly exciting opportunity, I think. I have shared with a lot of our customers and our team that if you think about an accounting team and telling them that they needed to run the accounting side of the business without Microsoft Excel, you might have a revolt on your hands. And I would suggest that AI in a form is going to be similar in business to the calculator, to spell check, to Excel within the business. The kids are embracing it and they're going to bring it into the workplace. The things that we're cautious about is security. It's, for the most part, not yet secure unless you do it in your own data center or under your own control, your own cloud, private cloud instance, things like that. ChatGPT, even the enterprise edition that you pay for, if you take private information and you push it in there, we don't yet have a good enough appreciation about where that data lives and what's done with it and how it could be leveraged in the future. So I would caution people to make sure that they normalize data and do all the things associated with that. But embrace it, challenge your team to get comfortable with it, use it.
Because your competitors are going to, aren't they?
100%. If you don't, it goes back to adapt or die. It's going to change the way that businesses operate. The thing that is kind of a unique and special area that I think is going to highlight the human spirit as it relates to AI, though, is that the technology is designed to deliver average. So if you ask it to write a blog post around entrepreneurship, it's going to be average with every other blog post that's produced in America. However, it's the individual human spirit, the person who has the talent that can take it from that 75 or 80% and raise it to be the 95 or 100% of what is unique and special about that really highlights how humans and technology are going to be able to work together in the future. And so what I would encourage people to do is to figure out how to take average and make it excellent rather than just use the technology to get by.
If I was on the elevator and you had to make your quick elevator speech about the entrepreneur world and whether your friend's kid should get involved in it, what would you say?
I would say lean in, jump with both feet, test it, spend lots of time. The old adage of 10,000 hours is going to be 100% true in this arena. The ones that can really leverage it. There's a new job title that's emerged that's called a prompt engineer. It's somebody who knows how to ask the right questions into the artificial intelligence to get the outcomes out of it that they want. So whether it's writing code and asking it to write the code that you want, whether it's something like you can ask it how you would do an Excel formula and it'll give you the formulas that you need, write a great blog post, or create a artificial image. There are ways to interface with the technology to take it above the 75%, but you have to be an expert in it. So spend the time and learn it. The special sauce, if you will, that's emerged in the last couple of years as it relates to this is, historically speaking, you always had to be a coder or a knowledge user to ask the technology to do something that you wanted from it. In today's world, it's plain language. Large language models have given us that gift. But still yet, to be the specialist, you have to go the step further. It's like anything else. It's time under tension. Spend the time to do it and become the expert.
Tom, thank you for being my guest today. And again, his book is Adapt or Die, How to Create Innovation, Solve People Puzzles, and Win in Business. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
That's it for this week, and many thanks for listening. If you'd like to listen to other episodes, you can visit the Springfield Daily Citizen website at sgfcitizen.org/innertown or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.